All right, guys. Well, we'll get started. Thank you so much for making time for this tonight. Uh, this, this talk, six tastes, seven plant parts, one body. Um, it takes two different Ayurvedic teachings, and Ms. Susie, some context for you. In our Next Level Human program, we, Kate, the founder of Yoga Healers, laid out these 10 Ayurvedic habits, and the seven plant parts is in the fifth habit, um, plant-based diet, and six tastes is under habit 8, healthier eating guidelines. Every time I read Body Thrive again, these two teachings seem so similar to me. And so I've thought about this a lot, and I think these two teachings are just two other ways of thinking of food. So we've been taught to think about food in terms of caloric content or sometimes macronutrient, and it's not that like those both have values, but they're two in isolation really limited ways of looking at food. I think the teaching on the six tastes and the seven plant parts are just two other modalities through which we can view food. So let me pull up a screen to share here. Here we go. And I do think, although they're distinctly different teachings, I think you'll see a little bit, at least a little bit of overlap between the teachings on the six tastes and the seven plant parts. So as always, if you take a Transformation Nation, any kind of an event, whether it's a workshop or a free public talk like this, I think you have a right to expect to know what to expect. So we're going to start. I'm going to facilitate a guided stomach meridian meditation. To be clear, the teachings on six tastes and seven plant parts are both Vedic. They're from India, so they come from Ayurveda. Stomach meridian meditation is not Vedic, it's Taoist. It comes from traditional Chinese medicine. I do think like those two ancient healing systems, Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine, have roots in the same soil. So I do think there's some value, but I did want to be clear that I'm mixing and matching here a little bit. I'm going to offer some context on how body types may impact the foods that will be of most benefit. So we'll talk about these in terms of like from a Western physiology and training approach, but also the Ayurvedic doshas. We're going to talk about the importance of including a lot of diversity of plants in our diets. I'll share the Ayurvedic teaching of six tastes, and we'll talk a bit on how that may inform how we apply foods based on specific needs of our bodies. And I'm going to offer the Ayurvedic teaching on the seven plant parts for the same thing, the same reason we're doing six tastes, because it may inform at times how we choose to apply foods to reach specific needs. And we're going to close with a brief overview, 5 to 7 minutes at most, on our 12-month Ayurvedic health coaching program, Next Level Human. So we'll start with a practice, the stomach meridian practice. Let me just change the view here. All right, so find a comfortable seated position. If it feels safe and comfortable for you, you could close down the eyes, keep them softly closed. But if that doesn't feel safe, or if you just don't want to, keep them open, but keep them open with a soft gaze. I'm going to describe a course along your body. And as I describe this course, I'd like you to imagine a yellow line of energy following along this trail along your body. If you wanted to trace it with the fingers, you could, and you don't have to. So again, I'd like you to visualize this line of energy as yellow, but if your mind changes the color, just adjust accordingly. No reason to fight your mind on that. So start with your attention on the cheekbones just below the eyes, and then trace that yellow line of energy down your jawline, skirting around the mouth, and then up the jawline to a point just in front of the ears. Trace that line of energy up to the hairline, and then along the hairline to a point just above the eyes, and then feel that line of energy as if it was falling down your face, down to the collarbones. From the collarbones, that line of energy goes out toward the shoulders. And then it falls down the front of the chest, just on the outside of the nipple line, and down the abdomen, And if the groin creases, that line, or rather that line of energy reaches out to the groin creases, down the fronts of the thighs to the knees. And then from the knees, that line of energy follows the outside of the calves, the front outside of the calves, down to the second toe. And then start again, cheekbones just below the eyes, falling down the face, skirting around the lips, down to the jawline, across the jawline to a point in front of the ears, up to the hairline, along the hairline so that each of these two lines of energy are just above the eyes. Let them fall down the face all the way to the collarbones, out to the shoulders, down the front of the chest, the abdomen, to the hip creases, and out to the hips, down the fronts of the thighs to the knees, down the outsides of the calves, and terminating at the second toe. The cheekbones just below the eyes, falling down the face, skirting around the lips to the jawline, tracing up along the jawline to a point in front of the ears, back up to the hairline, each line coming across closer to center, just above the eyes, and then falling down the face all the way to the collarbones, out to the shoulders, down the front of your chest, down the abdomen, into the groin creases, out toward the hips, and then falling down the front of the thighs to the knees, and then falling down the front outside of the calves to the second toe. Below the eyes, falling down toward the jawline, tracing around the lips, across the jawline, almost to the ears, back up the face to the hairline, across the hairline to 2 points just above the eyes, falling down the face, all the way down to the collarbones, out to the shoulders, down the front of the chest, down the abdomen, into the hip creases, and then out to the hips. Then falling down the fronts of the thighs, tracing down to the knees, and then falling down the front, outsides of the shins to the second toe. And we're going to trace that course one more time. On the cheekbones just below the eyes, tracing down around the lips to the jawline, up the jawline to the ears, back up toward the crown of your head, stopping at the hairline, and then moving across towards center, each line pausing just above the eyes, and then falling all the way down to the collarbone, out to the shoulders, down the chest, down the abdomen, into the hip crease, out to the hips, down the front of the thighs to the knees, and then down the front, outside of the shins, terminating at the second toe. Now find some present moment anchors. So notice where your sensation is most provocative right now. So for me, that's probably the sense of the floor of my home under my feet, but it could be the temperature and the pressure of your hands wherever they're coming into contact with your legs, or maybe your seat in your chair, or maybe it has something to do with your breath. And each time your attention shifts into a thought, it's okay, just notice that. Identify it as what it is. It's just thinking. Come back to this point of most provocative sensation. And then gently blink your eyes open, taking in the room around you, the physical room around you, and the objects in that room. And if there are people sharing that physical space with you, take them in with your eyes as well. And eventually bring your eyes back to your device, taking in the other people with whom we're sharing that Zoom space. Thank you, friends. Great job. All right, we're back to our slideshow. Whoops, that is not what we want. All right, so one of the things that because it's going to come up in the discussion, and somatotype is from a Western physiology and training standpoint. So personal trainers, nutrition coaches, nutritionists, when they talk about body types, they're going to think about it in terms of somatotype. It has some value. Dosha is a Vedic concept. It's really similar to the somatotypes, but it's from the Vedic sciences. The difference between dosha and somatotype is that dosha isn't just looking at the body, but it's looking at personality, it's looking at the nature of the mind. It also looks at our balances and imbalances. So for purposes of this discussion, we're really going to be talking primarily, when we're comparing somatotype and dosha, we're going to be talking mostly about physically. So with these three body types, what I would want you to know is, like, it's not that it's good to be an ectomorph and it's bad to be an endomorph. It's that each body type has its strengths, and each body type brings its challenges or its limitations. And all three body types can be balanced or imbalanced. So we can be healthy, balanced, and at an ideal weight, optimized for longevity, vitality, and thrive as an ectomorph, or in the dosha, we would call that vata, a mesomorph, or for the dosha, we would call it pitta, or an endomorph, and again, the dosha, we would call kapha. A tendency that I see, this happens, people fall into this trap because endomorphs tend to have bigger bodies, like bigger frames, everything is bigger, and to put on weight much more easily. Anybody that's overweight, sometimes people say that's an endomorph or that's a kapha body. But every one of these body types can be underweight, overweight, or balanced. Some ways to determine your default body type and how these things will affect your body's needs in terms of the foods that you eat. Well, like in Next Level Human, you guys have met with an Ayurvedic practitioner. That is the best ways to go to a professional and find out. You could also, if you're going to a personal trainer or nutrition coach, they could be helpful with helping you determine a somatotype. But what I would say is I'm going to go through some characteristics of the three different body types tonight. It might be useful to look at what your body looks like right now, but I think as a general rule of thumb, think about a time in your life where your body was most imbalanced. So for a lot of us as young adults, we're 18, 19, 20 years old. What your body was like at that time is probably a pretty good indication of what your somatotype, or at least the physicality of your dosha is. So the first one we're going to start with is vata or endomorph. So these are long, lean frames. The ectomorph, the vata, tends to have small bones and a really small skeletal structure. Could be very tall, could be tall and thin, but also could be really short and thin. The joints in this body type often tend toward being toward joint soreness and cracky, like making a lot of noise, so stand up and lots of cracks. With this particular body type, one of the limitations is they have to fight hard. If they're trying to put on muscle, every ounce of muscle that they put on, they have to fight for it. It does not come easily. It's a little bit against their nature. I had an employee at Brazos Bend State Park who years ago came to me and said, "Hey, I'd like to put on some muscle, and I'd love to work with somebody for a workout plan and an eating plan." So I had some thoughts, and I sent her to someone else who was better than that and certified for that on the training side. But the bottom line is, this particular colleague had a vata or an ectomorphic frames, right? So it's not that she couldn't put on muscle, just never going to come easily. So that's the limitation. That's one of the limitations. Here's one of the strengths that comes with it. They really easily maintain a lean frame. So it's not that it's impossible to be a Vata and an ectomorph and be overweight, but it's not like that doesn't just, it happens with other body types much more easily. Um, so one of the other limitations with this body type is they tend to be more prone toward injury and depletion. And the last note on this slide, please disregard that. That's really more for physical training, for um, optimizing for strength. So that's one, Vata or ectomorph. Now, I wanted you guys to be able to see what a healthy, balanced body for each of these three body types looks like in both a male and female frame. So I picked like a sport that really this body type is optimized for. And for the Vata and ectomorph, it's marathon and endurance runners. So the people that run like marathons, 50-mile, 100-mile races, it's not that a Pitta can't do that, or a mesomorph. It's not that it's impossible for a Kapha or an endomorph, but the frame that's really optimized for that is the Vata and the ectomorphic frame. So you see these two um, healthy, lean, balanced bodies here. Look at the size of the frame. Look at the size of the wrists, the hands, the shoulders. Everything is pretty small, right? Vata or ectomorph. So the next body type that we're going to look at is Pitta or mesomorph. So this is right in the middle. So this is a decidedly medium-sized skeletal system. So the bones are medium-sized. Hands, wrists tend to be medium-sized. When the Pitta or the mesomorphic frame is balanced, they have a distinctly triangular shaped body. So we'll come back to these pictures here in a moment because I want to talk about this. Um, some of the strengths with this particular body style is they quite easily put on muscle when they're training, right? And putting on muscle comes really easily. Um, if they overeat and they bring in too much caloric content, they eat too many calories, they easily gain weight. If they start to reduce the calories, they easily lose weight. All of that comes really easily. This is more on the mental side, but for this body type, they tend to be prone, they're like really driven people, prone to overtraining, prone to overworking. Um, they're also prone to inflammation, burnout, and injury. And because they push themselves and they don't have the same kind of endurance as the third body type that we're going to talk about, the Pitta or the mesomorph really like an early wearing out of joints, ligaments, and tendons. This happens quite easily. So if there is one sport that really is optimized for this mesomorphic or Pitta body frame, it's that of the mixed martial artists. It's not that I've seen ectomorphic Vata mixed martial artists. I've seen actually quite a few mixed martial artists with a Kapha or an endomorphic frame. But look at the frames on these bodies, distinctly triangular shape, very defined musculature. This is like the mixed martial arts is really, this frame is really optimized for that. And that brings us to our third body type. This is Kapha or endomorph. So this is a larger skeletal frame. Um, they have like bigger, literally bigger bones. Like sometimes I was overweight as a child, right? I have a decidedly medium-sized frame at a healthy weight. Uh, I thought I had a big skeleton because when I was a chubby little boy, my mom used to say, "You're not fat, you're just big boned." Right? It's a compassionate thing that people can sometimes say. Right? With this particular body type, the Kapha or the endomorph, they literally have bigger bones, bigger hands, bigger wrists, bigger shoulders. Everything's bigger. Some among their strengths, and they have many, is their endurance is amazing. This is a body type that is made to work. They easily put on muscle, but they also really, if they overeat and they're not working their body, they also really easily put on body fat. From a personality side with the Kapha dosha, this particular dosha tends to be prone to sluggishness and inertia. So it can be really tough for them to get going and get moving. So for things like eating well, or eating in the ways that we're going to be talking about tonight, and moving the bodies, getting exercise. This is like more than any of the other body types. The Kapha or the endomorph really benefits from having an accountability partner. If there is a sport that really optimizes where the strengths of the KaphaEndomorph are really highlighted most. It's power, like Olympic powerlifting. And if you look at the bodies and the frames of these two athletes, they're beautiful. They're strong, they're healthy, they've got significant muscle tissue. And this male athlete, look at that load that he's got up over his head here. It's pretty impressive. All right, so we're going to come back to this because I'm going to be talking about what some of the foods, how they affect the different doshas. So again, the Kapha is the bigger dosha, Pitta is in the middle, Vata is long and lean. All right, when it comes to eating, whether you're talking about counting calories or using macronutrients as a measure, or we're talking about these Ayurvedic principles, like the 6 tastes and 7 plant parts, like I call this is kind of a joke, plate diversity is the key, but you really, like our bodies really do best when we have lots of different things. So a couple of quotes that I think lend themselves to this. One is from social scientist Michael Pollan, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. It's really good advice. It's really good advice. There are lots of reasons. I think next month we'll do our free public talk on intermittent fasting or rhythmic eating, and I'll talk about why this is true. You also may have heard, and I can't attribute this to one person. I think this is just in the general consciousness, but the advice that we should be eating the rainbow, which is really good advice. So when we get into these two teachings, one of the things that I'd like you to just remember, and we're going to come back to this exact slide at the end of the talk again to highlight this. When we talk about the 6 tastes, ideally the 6 tastes they may not be represented in every meal, but every day we should be intentionally seeking, if we're following the principles of this teaching, intentionally seeking to make sure that we have all 6 tastes represented in our diet every day. When we talk about the 7 plant parts, one of the goals is if we want to optimize for health, for longevity, vitality, and thrive, we want to include as many plants and as many different plant parts in our diet as possible. So Lonnie and Sonia, you know this, in Next Level Human, when we get to Habit 8 Healthier Eating Guidelines, we did this dietary plant diversity challenge where the goal was I gave you a point system for as many different plants and as many different parts of plants as possible. But we can do that on our own too and just keep tracking. It might be fun to have a little competition as a family to see who can get the high score from week to week. All right, so for the 6 tastes, if we have the 6 tastes represented in our diet every day, my Ayurveda teacher, Kate Stillman, says our cravings get smarter. So what does that mean? It means that the things that are going to help us be healthier humans are going to be the things that we're craving, and the things that add inflammation or in other ways make us unhealthy, those don't taste as good to us, and we don't have those same kind of cravings for them. So cravings get smarter. So why do they get smarter? Well, in Ayurveda, we have this idea, it's called the universal law of polarity. And according to the universal law of polarity, like increases like, and opposites reduce each other. So this is a pretty important teaching. The universal law of polarity really ties in well with the 6 tastes. The truth is, in our Next Level Human program, I probably talk about the universal law of polarity almost every week. Like it's important everywhere. But if there's like one place where really, like, wow, this really nailed it, it's the 6 tastes. So in Ayurveda, there are 7 different forms of tissue. It's thought that the body is made up of 7 different types of tissue. So the 7 types are plasma, blood, muscle, fat, bones, bone marrow, and procreation fluids. With the 6 tastes, how does this tie in together? Each of these 6 tastes performs really specific actions to help us design healthy functional tissue. So in order for us to have 7 tissues at an appropriate distribution and really optimize for health, we've got to have all 6 tastes in our diet daily. The other thing about, like, what do we care if we have good tissue formation? Well, good tissue formation is really key to to having ojas. It's really a prerequisite for ojas. Anybody like to describe your understanding of ojas? Do you guys remember that? Okay, no problem. So ojas is vigor or vitality, but for our purposes, like you can think of ojas as being almost synonymous with immune system response, having a healthy immune system response. So it's a Sanskrit word, it's an Ayurvedic principle, but the Western equivalent really, like how we would probably most succinctly describe that as immune system function. So we need to have good tissue formation in order to have optimal immune system function. So the first taste that we're going to talk about, and by the way, the Sanskrit for taste is rasa. The first taste that we're going to talk about is bitter. And the Sanskrit for bitter is tikta. So bitter taste is tikta rasa. So this is the taste of dark leafy greens. So if you think about things like kale, like collard greens, Brussels sprouts, dill, turmeric, like raw cacao, coffee, most teas, zucchini, eggplants, all are examples of this bitter taste. So how can you get more bitter taste in your diet? What's a way to make it palatable? Well, one, if you're a salad eater, you could diversify greens and salads. I hate to say this, like what kind of vegetarian doesn't like salads? I don't really like salad. Like so, I very rarely eat salads, but I love smoothies, and I find that smoothies are a great way to increase the greens as well. In terms of function, um, bitter taste refines and tightens tissue, right? So if you think about like for somebody that is trying to gain weight, like that colleague that I told you about from Brazos Bend, like she needed to have bitter taste in her diet. And to be clear, I was not familiar with this teaching at that time that I worked there, but having an excess of bitter taste in their diet would be counterproductive to our goals. But if somebody's trying to lose weight, then bitter taste, if they want to use the teaching of the six tastes to help optimize for that, um, they really need to have bitter taste well represented because it refines and it tightens tissues. So from a dosha standpoint, bitter taste balances pitta, that's the medium-sized frame, the mesomorph, and it balances kapha, the big-sized frame of the endomorph, but it irritates vata. So those long, lean frames can be irritated by too much bitter taste. In terms of the universal law of polarity, again, like increases like and opposites reduce each other. How do we balance out bitter taste? Bitter is balanced by sweet taste, right? And we'll get to sweet eventually here. Next is pungent. Pungent is katu. So pungent taste is katu rasa. These are foods with a spicy kick. So if you think about things like chilies, either dried chilies or fresh chilies, radishes, ground pepper, ginger, mustard greens, lots of the greens, mustard greens, arugula in particular, have that really spicy kick. So I tried making a smoothie once. I had mustard greens from a CSA and I put them in the smoothie. I'm going to tell you, I couldn't drink the smoothie. It's just too strong. So with how would I enjoy this taste? If you saute mustard greens and you put a little garlic in with them and some olive oil and saute them, it's wonderful that way. In terms of the pungent taste, the functions that it does for the body is it helps to break down heavier nutrients in the body, and it helps us to release stuck energy, including congestion. So if you've had the experience of having like a sinus infection or a lot of mucus and eaten something really spicy, like a hot sauce, or when I served in Korea, there's a stew, it's made out of kimchi, kimchi jjigae. Jjigae is the word for stew. Super spicy, super pungent taste. But it would totally open up the sinuses. There's a word in Sanskrit from Ayurveda for digestive fires. Ayurveda is obsessive about digestion, but digestive fires is Agni. Pungent taste is one of the tastes that really helps us to optimize for digestive fires, for Agni, and it helps to detoxify the body. So if you've ever eaten something that's spicy enough that it makes you sweat, sweating is a great way to eliminate toxins from the body. So that makes sense. The other thing I should have said about these teachings, think about your lived experience as you have it and see which parts of this syncs up with what you already know and which parts conflict with it. And that may help you to decide where to focus your attention. Pungent taste physically also helps us to increase circulation in the body. It may help with weight loss. So this is the second taste. We talked about bitter taste, but pungent taste as well for people who are trying to lose weight might be really helpful. So in context, if you look at the doshas, pungent taste balances kapha, the larger frame body, the endomorph, but it is probably going to aggravate vata, and almost certainly in excess will aggravate pitta. Pitta is a hot and fiery constitution anyway. Too much hot is probably, it could put us over the edge. What does over the edge look like? What would you see in your body? It might be heartburn, it might be indigestion, it might be skin related issues. To balance, like increases like, opposites reduce each other. To balance pungent taste, we need sweet. Should tell you guys too, what I was hoping to have for you was the taste on like a clock formation so that they were all opposite each other. It's a really cool idea. The problem is it didn't work like that. They weren't always opposite like that. The next taste we're going to talk about is astringent. This is kashaya rasa is astringent taste. So this is a cooling and grounding tasting food. So like if there's one that's a quintessential astringent taste food, it's pomegranate. But astringent also applies to lemon juice. It applies to legumes, beans, other fruits like cranberries and unripe bananas, but also some vegetables. Turnip has a really distinctive flavor, a really distinctive astringent flavor, as do artichokes. The function physically helps the tissues to pucker and to firm up, right? So again, we talked about bitter being good for weight loss. We talked about pungent being good for weight loss. Astringent is another one for people that are trying to reduce body size. Astringent is a really good choice. Also can help with combating diarrhea. If people have loose stools, it can help solve that problem. Unripe bananas is actually an Ayurveda. It's a really common suggested remedy for loose stools. But this particular taste, these foods tend to help scrape fat from the insides of our cells and our blood vessels. So it's also highly anti-inflammatory. Astringent taste balances pitta and kapha, but can be really aggravating for vata. So the medium and the large size frames benefit from astringent. Makes sense with the pucker and firm up with the body as well, right? To balance astringent, you can use three. You've got three choices: sweet, salty, and sour. Speaking of which, sour is amla. So amla rasa is sour taste. These are foods that make your lips pucker, like the fish lips that little kids do sometimes. If the food gives you that kind of instinct, that's a sour taste. So like good examples, obvious ones, lemons and limes, right? Grapefruit, famous for that kind of sour taste. Also apple cider vinegar, in any fermented food. So you guys, I think all of you know I'm fairly obsessed right now with fermenting foods. So sauerkraut, kimchi, miso, homemade yogurt, all of those things represent sour taste. Think about like what you know the health benefits of fermented foods to be when we look at the function. Physically, the functions are it helps to perk up agni, to perk up the digestion, right? So fermented foods are great for our digestive tract. They help build and support a healthy microbiome. They also enhance other flavors of the things that we're eating. Sour taste foods have a hydrophilic impact on tissues. Hydro being water, philic being loving. So if you think about rabies, it's sometimes described as hydrophobia, a fear of water. The opposite of that is hydrophilic. So it's really nourishing and hydrating for our cells. Sour taste also tends to nourish our organs and blood, can energize the body, and really improve digestion. Sour foods balance vata, in excess may aggravate pitta. So that long lean frame will benefit from the sour taste. Pitta out of balance can be irritated. To balance sour taste, we need astringent. My favorite, sweet taste. This is madhura. Madhura rasa is sweet taste. These are any foods that taste nurturing. So obviously it's sweet. It's cookies, cakes, ice cream. But like healthy expressions of Madhura rasa would include things like grains, meats, bread, pastas, root vegetables, any fruit, whether it's a fresh fruit or a dried fruit, would be sweet taste. In terms of the function, um, they can be really great for skin health. They increase the body's moisture and they help prevent dehydration. In moderate amounts, they can help balance hormones, soothe the mucous membranes. I already mentioned skin health. I should also say, like, in excess, sweet is really damaging to hormones and really throws them out of balance. Also, in excess, this is going to be a no-brainer, right? If you look at the foods that are on this list based on your lived experience, they contribute to weight gain, diabetes, and heart disease. So think again about the frame, the Vata being the long lean frame, Pitta being the medium frame, Kapha being the large frame. Madhura rasa, sweet taste, tends to be balancing for Vata, can be for Pitta, but it's really aggravating for Kapha. To balance sweet taste, we need bitter or sour. So here's a way to apply this in your life. Any of you have a sweet tooth? I do for sure. When the sweet tooth is out of control, think about like increases like opposites reduce each other. Eat a pickle or eat some sauerkraut, maybe eat some greens. What I find is if I eat like a really sour pickle, like a really sour kosher dill pickle, when my sweet tooth is really raging, the sweet tooth goes away, it stops. So that's a way that you can apply this. You can do that with all the tastes. This is just one that almost everybody can identify with. And the sixth taste is salty. The Sanskrit for salty is lavana. So this is lavana rasa is sweet taste. So these are foods that taste, this is a typo here, that taste nourishing. And it's really, in terms of examples, you don't need examples. Any non-iodized salt has that salty taste. Sea vegetables are another great example of a way that you can get this. In terms of functionality, salty taste enhances appetites and other tastes. So if you think about a food that has really low life force, so leftovers, for example, been in the fridge for a few days, the flavor tends to dissipate over time. To make it appetizing again, one thing that we can do is add salt to it, right? So this enhances appetite and other tastes. It also energizes, it can really aid in digestion, and it can help support our absorption of certain nutrients. We have to be careful with it. Again, it needs to be a moderate use because in excess, it can lead to hypertension, dehydration, intestinal inflammation, and bloating. And by the way, from the standpoint of Ayurveda, intestinal inflammation is just a precursor to inflammation in the whole rest of the body. It all starts in the intestinal tract. Lavana rasa, salty taste, balances Vata, but it may aggravate Pitta and Kapha. And this particular taste is balanced by astringent. So any thoughts, friends, on how you could apply the six taste teaching to optimize for vitality for your body goals? If you don't have anything you want to share, you certainly don't have to. I literally signed up to be on the spot. You guys didn't. But if you have thoughts, I'd love to hear them.
Well, Chris, I was thinking about the, which one's the spicy, the pungent, and how it relates to my body type. I'm a Pitta. So yesterday I went to this place in Sugar Land. It's called Pacific Coast Tacos. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I love
it. On Highway 6 and 59. Yeah. So when I go there, I always get the same tacos, one veggie, one tofu. But I always get the pickled habanero onions and the habanero sauce. This time it just, either I ate too much or it was too strong, but it really unbalanced me. You know, I had super duper heartburn and it upset my stomach as well. So while you were talking about the descriptions, I'm like, yes, that's what happened to me. And then, so I wonder, since I'm already a fiery constitution, if these, you know, if eating as much spicy food as I do, and by spicy, I mean hot peppers, is probably not in excess is obviously not a good idea for my constitution.
Yeah, I think from an Ayurvedic standpoint,
Yeah.
I think that's exactly right. And I struggle with the same thing. I love hot sauce and I love peppers and but yeah, they have the same effect to me. They can really throw me out of balance.
Right. That's how I felt today. So it's just interesting how my constitution really is in line with what is your description.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. That's such a great example, Sonia.
Hey, Chris,
Hey, Miss Susie.
so thank you for this, the invite, but I did learn my body type, Pitta, and you did give me one good, I took note of eating pickles when I get that sweet tooth. So I will, I will keep that in mind. So thank you for that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I wish I had known that at Brazos Bend when I got into one of my Oreo stress eating binges.
Yes.
All right, guys. Well, with that, we're going to switch gears a little bit into. They're not exactly related teaching, but I find the similarities. I find a lot of similarities, and this is a teaching on 7 plant parts. So different parts or stages of the plant growth give us an opportunity to connect with the full cycle of life, particularly if they're all represented in our diet at some point. So all parts serve a purpose. It's not that sprouts are great and roots are terrible, or roots are great and sprouts are terrible. Every part of the plant, can you think about if you took away the seed, sprout, root, stalk, leaf, flower, fruit, it wouldn't be a plant anymore, right? And it wouldn't be able to survive and thrive in the world. So like we're the same way. So like eating all the different parts and stages of a plant really help to connect us to and contribute to our wholeness. So the 7 plant parts, and you'll see here a list of 8 because we brought it full circle here. The seed, the sprout, the root, the stalk, the leaf, the flower, the fruit, and the seed. So if we look at the seed, obviously we're not going to need a definition for everything, but I thought, you know what, I don't know, how would I describe a seed if anybody ever asked? How would I describe a shoot? A seed is the flowering plant's unit of reproduction. So some examples that you might see in the diet is basically anything that can sprout. So spice seeds, grain and legume seeds, nuts, oil seeds, sunflower seeds, any of those are examples. From a physical standpoint, now this teaching on the 7 plant parts, each part of the plant has some properties that affect our physicality, and each part of the plant has some functions that affect our mental and emotional bodies. So physically, seeds provide us with a really deep energy, and they help to build bodily tissue. Right. So again, for that vata that wants to gain weight, that wants to put on muscle, seeds are probably a pretty good choice. But for somebody that is trying to lose a little bit of weight, it's not that we don't want to eat any seeds, but we probably need to be very moderate with that. And seeds, from the standpoint of mental and emotional body, they provide us with grounding in a really heavy, deep, potent energy. Let's look at sprouts. So the sprout is the shoot of the plant. It's the first part that you'll see grow out of the ground after the seed. Well, the verb is also to sprout. So examples are alfalfa sprout. Some of you guys may have seen my video on how the kitchen gardening on how to sprout your own alfalfa sprouts at home. Sunflower sprouts, bean sprouts, sprouted quinoa. Physically, these provide us with a really quick source of energy. They've got great plant protein and lots of nutrients, lots of minerals and nutrients. From a mental and emotional standpoint, they provide a really zippy, energized, childlike, quick energy. So think about this in terms of the dosha. When I think about the dosha in these plant parts, that zippy, energized, childlike, quick energy, that is vata. That is vata all over. Whereas if you look at the seed, heavy, grounding, those are very much kapha characteristics. All right, roots. This is the part of the plant which detaches to the ground. It doesn't have to be underground, but often is. And it feeds the whole rest of the plant. It's got a really important job. It conveys water and nourishment to the rest of the plant through branches and fibers. It also, like if the tubers stay in the ground over the winter, that's going to be the part that sprouts and brings life to that plant the following spring as well. So common examples of roots that are probably in some or all of our diets are carrots, beets, potatoes and radishes, jicama, and yams. From a physical standpoint, these provide lots of minerals, fibers, and sugars. The sugar is probably pretty obvious. From a mental and emotional body standpoint, provides with building energy. They're grounded and nutrifying. So one note that Kate put in Body Thrive is if we're eating roots, we really need to be careful and balance them with leaves or we're going to get stagnant. So a lot of these qualities that we talked about, these are very much kapha qualities. And if you remember from the teaching on the 6 tastes, which taste did root vegetables fall under? Do you guys remember? The sweet taste, madhura rasa, sweet taste. So for somebody that's like the vata that's trying to put on weight, probably having a few more roots in their diet than maybe than leaves might be good. But for somebody that's trying to lose weight, we probably want to have a lot more leaves and fewer roots in the diet. Stalk. So the stalk is the main stem of the plant. So common examples, like stalks of lots of different plants, broccoli, Swiss chard, dandelion, and kale. These are famous for the leaves, but the stalks have a lot of value too. But if there's one stalk that sort of is quintessential and is in almost every kind of soup and is on almost every vegetable tray, it's got to be celery. Right? Physically, they're very hydrating. The water content in stalks tends to be really, really high. So they're great for hydration. They have a lot of fiber. If you think about like the celery, all those string-like fibers down through, lots of fiber, and they're really low calorie. There's a sort of a myth that you consume more energy chewing celery than you take in through eating it. I don't think that's actually true, but it's really low calorie, and it's a great way. Kate refers to it as chewing the cud if we're chewing the stalk of the plant. Really low calorie, really high work on our point. From a mental and emotional body standpoint, that chewing action that I described is great for relaxing the jaw, and relaxing the jaw relaxes the rest of the nervous system. Leaf. All right, this is a flattened structure of a higher plant, that is higher off the ground. It's typically green and blade-like, does not have to be, but typically is. And it attaches either directly to the stem or through a stalk. Common examples, any kind of lettuce, kale, collard greens, dandelion greens, lots of wild plants. Like I harvested a bunch of leer leaf sage a couple weeks ago to make a batch of sauerkraut with. By the way, it was a disaster, but it wasn't because of the greens. It was because I didn't wash them well enough. But any of those would be great examples of leaves. The sunlight energy of the plants, the chlorophyll, the nutrients, minerals, all of those are in the leaf, right? So it's a great way for us to connect with those contents. Eating leaves also tends to scrape and cleanse the digestive tracts and contracts tissues. So for like that vata that's trying to gain weight, they probably want to be careful and not have a bunch of leaves in the diet. It's going to be counterproductive. But somebody whose goal is to lose weight, including more leaves in the diet is going to be a really positive step that will be helpful. From a mental and emotional standpoint, they provide a really quick daily energy, but they also help to clarify the mind, clarify the soul, and help to cleanse and remove any stagnation. Flower. So this is the seed-bearing part of a plant, consisting of the reproductive organs, typically surrounded by brightly colored petals. Examples of edible flowers: roses, Johnny jump ups, lavender, fennel, Where I grew up in eastern Maine, there was this plant that everybody had in their yard called tiger lily. This beautiful bright orange blossom. Guys, I'll either text it to you or I'll post it in the Next Level Human forum as well. But it's gorgeous, but it's also really edible. So it's beautiful in a salad. Physically, like having flowers represented in their diet really nurtures the senses and nurtures the soul. And mentally and emotionally, these plant parts can help us find refinement and joy, and they really add beauty and sensitivity to our lives and to the foods that we're enjoying. And that brings us to fruit. So fruit is the sweet and fleshy product of a tree or other plant. Usually contains seeds and can be eaten as food. So there are numerous examples, but apples, bananas, avocados, pineapples, dates, grapes, all really common examples of fruit that people have in our diets. So physically, they provide sugars and really quick carbs, and they replenish blood sugar energy really quickly. With the mental and emotional bodies, they create relaxation and ease, and all the sweetness in the fruit can remind us of the sweetness of life. So think about that summer party, the Labor Day party, the Memorial Day party with the watermelon right out of the ice chest, ice cold, and that kind of emotional feeling that comes with that. So friends, do you have any thoughts on how you would apply the teaching on the 7 plant parts to optimize for vitality?
I'm thinking of what I already do, like right before this meeting, I had quinoa. My husband actually made, and I'll share the recipe on Next Level Human because it's delicious. Quinoa, beans, corn in the slow cooker. And you top it with cilantro. A lot of people don't like cilantro. I love it. So I washed it really well and I cut everything, like even the stalk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I chopped everything into really fine pieces. And I ate tons of it. So I'm just thinking about things that I already do. Like quinoa would be the seed, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So in just this meal, I kind of hit a little bit of all of them. Fruits, of course, right? We love fruits and the sugars and the quick carbs, but it's a little more challenging to do. Like the leaves, salads, but more easily doable, smoothies, right? You can just throw your greens in there and then you mix it up with your fruit and then it doesn't taste like the greens anymore. But you're still getting the nutrients.
Yeah, that's my go-to. The only way I'm going to have 6 cups of greens a day is if it's in a smoothie. There's no way I'm going to have that in a salad.
Absolutely. Not without a bunch of dressing.
Yeah, exactly.
Then that defeats the purpose.
Thanks, Sonia, for sharing that. Yeah, and I heard like at least 3 different plant parts in just that meal. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Susie, when Sonia shares that recipe on the in our Next Level Human Facebook group, I'll text that to you as well.
I would like that, Chris. Thank you. And yes, I was just amazed. Now I more in tune when I'm outside in the garden planting things.
Yeah.
And now that you brought this lesson about the plants, the structures, I will be more in tune as to what I'm planning and what it's going to do and bring, and just be more aware and talk to them and tell them I'm aware of you guys when I put you in the ground. So
I love that.
and also another thing that I was with everything that we when we're using these plants, these vegetables, and I learned to recycle, to reuse everything, to put it in a compost pile, and it'll go back to the growth and the balance of the plant, which will help us too. So if you ever need your compost thing, it's still over there.
Okay, I'm
It's
so
still
glad you guys
sitting.
are using it.
No, it's still sitting at your residence.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think no one uses it. So
If I make a trip over there in my service vehicle, maybe I'll stop and pick it up because I could put it to use here.
yes, yeah. But that's really the awareness of everything that you brought, Mr. Chris. It's an awareness, and I appreciate that.
Oh, thanks, Miss Susie. And thanks so much for sharing that. I love the part that you talked about, not just observing all the plants that you had in your garden, in your yard, but communicating with them and letting them know that you're aware. And I love that. I think that's a really healthy way to connect.
Yes.
All right, guys. So like just to close the loop on this, the point of both of these teachings, like having we don't have to be vegetarians, but having more plants and more plant diversity represented in our diet, like all good, there's nothing bad that comes from that. The more plant diversity we have in the diet, probably the healthier, the more we're going to be optimizing for health. That old aphorism of eat the rainbow really is really great advice. It's really wise.
Yes.
I've got a short talk I'm going to give on Next Level Human. Before I do that, do you guys have any questions, comments, or observations on the 6 Taste, 7 Plant Parts, 1 Body teachings tonight? Okay, awesome. You guys gave great input and feedback along the way. So Next Level Human is a year-long program based on the habits of the ancient yogis. We work from Kate Stillman's book, Body Thrive, these 10 habits. The habits they are not rocket science, and they're not easy for us to, they're not easy to optimize on our own. So part of the reason that that it works, that the program works, is we get membership in a dynamic group. So we get together once a week through Zoom. We talk about a principle of habit evolution. Where else have we ever been trained in how to evolve our habits? What's the best available social science when we want to change something in our habits? We talk about that. We go over the 10 weeks, we go through 10 different principles of habit evolution. We also go through one of the habits from Body Thrive. With the dynamic group, we help pick each other up when one of us has fallen, dust each other off, get ourselves back on our feet again, or we celebrate together when we have a win. So that's the weekly group coaching calls. People in the program are eligible for a monthly one-on-one coaching call with me. They have unlimited access to Zoom yoga, Transformation Nation Zoom yoga, plus guest passes, 2 guest passes every week. We have monthly workshops. Every other month, it's a wellness-related workshop, and we alternate those with yoga. And again, the folks that are in our program get to bring a guest. They have a +1 for every one of those workshops. And the other thing is, I haven't monetized this exactly what it's worth, but having access to Kate, my teacher's online Body Thrive curriculum, she's brilliant. She's brilliant, and her understanding of yoga and Ayurveda, especially for somebody like from the West, somebody from the United States, I think has really evolved. Like who benefits from Next Level Human? I would say like anyone, if your habits aren't already fully automated and exceeding your expectations, then probably people would benefit. But specifically the things that we're working on, if there are 2 things. Like one is to getting into rhythm with nature. So circadian rhythm is a concept that comes up over and over and over again. And like the goal for me is that we thrive rather than survive. We don't want to survive our lives. We want to thrive through our lives. So common outcomes are reduced chronic systemic inflammation, which is the common factor in every boogeyman way that people get sick in our society today. Improve quality and quantity of sleep. Moving toward rhythmic eating, or you might call it intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, working toward an optimal body composition, living and moving powerfully, having improved quality in relationships, more easeful living, less stress, more ease, and reduce compression in both our schedules and our lives. So those are kind of the outcomes that we're shooting for. And we are currently enrolling for our April cohort. Our next meeting will be, it's Monday, April the 4th, I believe is the date. So again, just to go over what we talked about tonight, I facilitated a guided stomach meridian meditation. I offered you some context on how our body types may impact
Shit, we missed it.
what would be most beneficial toward us.
We said
I
7 to 8, it'd be 8 our time.
I discussed the importance of including a great diversity of plants in our diets, shared the Ayurvedic teaching of 6 tastes and 7 plant parts. And for each of those, we talked about how that may inform how we choose foods based on our specific needs. And I provided a brief interview of our 12-month Ayurvedic health coaching program, Next Level Human. Guys, thanks so much for making time for this tonight. It was an honor and wonderful to connect with you guys.
Chris, I just wanted to say to Susie that I appreciate what you said about talking to the plants when you're out in your garden. I don't have a garden. However, I have a bunch of pots of plants, and I'm going to mess this name up. PHOTOS. Pothos.
Yes.
I'll take a picture of them. I mean, they are so easy they thrive so easily. When it got cold in the winter, I brought them home and they've been in my bedroom ever since. They're placed in a really nice place where they get enough sunlight, and they are thriving. And I get up every morning and I look to see if there's a new baby growing, and it's such a thrill. I call them my babies, like I was their mother. But yes, I hold them and I talk to them and I dust them off, and I just love seeing them grow. So I can only imagine what you feel like in your garden, like a bigger area, and how that would feel with food too. If you can grow and harvest your own food, that's just wonderful.
I just hope the neighbors do not hear me talking outside. What to the plants, but yeah, we forget as humans that we're tied to the earth. And one of the things to me, when I work out, I realize how we are tied to the earth and how important it is for us to take care of those things that have been given to us. And growing a garden really ties me more. It makes me realize how important those little things are, and to make sure that we're eating right too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good
Hey,
stuff,
Chris.
guys.
Can you make these slides available to us so I can print them? And when I do or try to attempt at a meal plan, I can go back through them and make some better decisions.
I would love to, Lonnie. What I'll do, guys, I'll save these on a Google file, and then I'll send a link to you so you've got that
Okay.
available.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Lonnie.
Thank you.
All right,
Chris.
friends. My pleasure. I'm gonna run out to Sunset Loop and see if I can catch the sunset over Lake Somerville.
Awesome. Take some pictures.
I will. You guys have an amazing evening.
Okay,
Bye.
Chris. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.